Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is the president and CEO of EntreNou Inc. and founder of Cymatrax. He is the visionary and developer of a new software platform aimed at enhancing optimal performance and human potential through targeted frequencies in digital audio, which results in healthier body, mind, spirit, and environment. Cymatrax sound software for sound lifestyles. As a past professional opera singer and audio engineer, he has also opened 33 different restaurants, nightclubs, and hotels, leading to his own TV cooking show in 2002, 2003. Welcome to the show, Alan Brunton.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on. This is really nice.
Yeah, I'm excited to have it. You know, you came into my radar really quick, and you're working on some really fascinating stuff that's really deep. And I'm so excited to explore your work. And then actually in reading the bio, looking at the former opera singer, serial entrepreneur, just a very fascinating background.
Well, my feet have never been planted. The longest was I got them when I was married for 5 years, and I just advance. I just do so many things, and so I always try to look for things to do. My father was actually an inventor, and he used technology of Nikola Tesla so successfully that the federal government came and shut him down twice. So, which is a whole nother story that we can talk about. And I was actually talking to a screenplay writer about doing a movie on him. But like I said, that's a whole nother story. Now, when I was raised in Amarillo, Texas, I would not have anything to do. So I'd go into my father's workshop and I'd see him working on things. And next thing I know, I'd look and see in one of his inventions, he would have something from my mother's kitchen. And I'd look at him and say, "Does mom know you have that?" And he'd look and say, "Don't tell her." So, I got to see him use things that were made for one purpose being used in ways that no one had ever thought of. And so that's exactly what happened to me whenever I was going through a divorce, and I went out to Florida from Texas to help a friend who had just bought 2 restaurants and didn't know what she was doing, and asked me to come out and help her open them up. So I got out there and working hard, and on my time off, I'd walk on the beach, and I saw a lot of complementary and alternative healthcare applications, a lot of holistic healthcare, natural ways of doing things. And what fascinated me the most was a lot of applications of sound therapy. And so I looked all around the community. I was in Clearwater at the time, and I saw a lot of people using crystal bowls and Tibetan copper bowls and tuning forks and chant and these machines that put out these specific frequencies applied, and people were getting stress relief from that. And they were getting reduction of inflammation from muscle tissue. And I thought, well, that's very helpful, especially since you don't have to use big pharma chemicals inside of you. So then I looked really closely at all those different modalities, and I saw they were all using the same frequencies. And I just, a little light bulb started to light up on top of my head. And I said, well, that's interesting. But if I take this to some of my friends, they're going to say, well, Alan, that's just a bunch of woo-woo. And so I said, okay. So I started looking then at other areas, including the recent research from institutions like Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, Harvard School of Medicine, MIT, and the Oxford Neurological Research Institute. And I spent about a year just going through all of their research looking at their clinical trials into using sound and frequency. And I mean, I had piles of stuff to look at, but I put things together and I looked, and they had done clinical trials where they had taken specific frequencies, applied them to the test subjects, and shown raised cognitive ability. And they've also then identified other frequencies, white noise, which does just the opposite and reduces the cognitive ability. So I just asked the simple question, aren't all of those frequencies within all the digital music we listen to? And people said yes. I said, well, why doesn't somebody create software that will take a digital audio file, analyze it, locate where those good frequencies are, lock onto them, and then reduce the amplitude of the white noise in between at such a way so that what we have then is no detriment to the quality of the recording, but we have also the less stress. The user will have less stress, more energy, and a higher cognitive focus. And so when I asked that question, it was told that that has never been done. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So without having any understanding about how to do software, I just started asking questions, which is part of who I am and how I do things. I've got an older brother that's very successful in business, and he actually went out and bought an old antique Jaguar and had it redone, and he done so well that it's won 2 national championships for show. And I looked at it and said, well, wait a second, this guy who's working on his car didn't graduate from high school. I can do this. So then I went out and bought an old 54 Hudson Hornet, put it in my backyard, and I said, okay, so I got to tear it apart. So I tore it apart, and then I had to go around and ask people, how do I put it back together? And I did, and I mean, the car was amazing. I took out the straight 8 engine, put in a rebuilt Chrysler 413 Police Interceptor. The car would do 150 miles an hour, had a push button automatic. And I'm not a mechanic, but I just asked people, how do you do it? So what happened was about 4 years ago, I was up in Addison, Texas, running a steakhouse, and I had a customer who would come in about once or twice a week after she closed her office, and she'd have a glass of wine and talk to me. And we started talking, and I've actually started studying a layman's way of looking at quantum physics since about 2000. And then once again with my father, understanding and using Tesla energy, I love to think then about how energy passes through the central nervous system and consciousness, and how we can actually make ourselves available to do more than what the 5 senses are. So she and I started talking, and she just dropped her jaw one day and said, you're too brilliant to be here. You've got to do something else. And I said, well, I get this idea about software. And I started thinking about that, like I said, when I was out in Florida in 2009. And it was just, she said, well, okay, well, tell me about it. And so I told her about it. And she said, well, that's out of my league, but I'll take you down to some people in Austin that I know, and you describe it to them. I went, okay. So we went down there. I made a PowerPoint presentation. Today it's called a pitch deck. I didn't know anything back then. But I did meet with a man named Tommy Hoden, who is the founder, CEO of a company called MagRabbit. And MagRabbit started out as being the logistics company for Dell many years ago. And they got to be so MagRabbit got to be so successful that it's now 5 companies. And then the other person I met with was the chief software buyer at Dell. His name is Manu Farhan, and he had 2 PhDs in tech and software and was working on his MBA at MIT. The guy that sat next to him in class was the chief neurosurgeon at Harvard. And so I'm going, okay, I'm talking to somebody here who knows his stuff. So anyway, I made this presentation, and Manuf looked at me and talked with Tommy Hoden, and they came back and said, what you are doing, if you decide to do this, and if you can produce it, it will go global in less than 1 year, because it has never been done. Had you come from software, you would not have been able to think of this. It's only because you come from outside of the box that you think of this. Now, the problem is, you don't come from software. So you're going to have credibility issues. So you're going to have people waiting to see it come to market first before they're going to invest in it. And so it's been almost a 4-year journey for me to get this software up and running, and we are about 90 days, a little bit less than 90 days to launch it. And we're going to launch it as a free app for everybody to use, so that they'll be able to download the app onto their device, and they'll be able to run their files through it. It'll take about 5 seconds for the software to render a new file. And it will go in and take let's say a 3.5 minute MP3, and then it will kick out another file. And I gave you the link so that you can use this on your podcast. So what is going to happen neurologically is that somebody asked me, okay, well, what kind of music does it work on? And I said, all kinds, because it's digital audio. Well, will it work on rap? Because I know Lil Wayne. And I said, yeah, it'll work on anything. Okay, then in that case, it'll work on books on audio. Yes. Okay, it'll work on podcasts. Yes. Corporate training. Yes. Online education. Yes. So there's such a huge broad spectrum that I have talked with so many people about this, and they're going, I mean, especially in the medical field of neurology. I've got some things and people I've talked to here recently that have looked at what I'm doing and have just said, everything you're saying is completely logical. It's just amazing that no one has ever thought of this before. So I've been doing, I spent about 2 years doing research while I was trying someone that will actually write my code. Now, the guy at Dell actually said, I would love to partner with you, but what you're doing is so different, I can guarantee that there is not a single person at Dell that has the skill set to write your code. Good luck. And he got up and left. And then Tommy Hoden said to me, well, I'll do your code. I've got 200 developers over in Vietnam. I said, okay. So he was going to take 20% of the company and build the software and be partners. The only problem was after 3.5 months of talks and emails and conference calls and video calls, their chief technology officer, which happened to be his son, came back and said, we can't write your code. So, there was 3.5 months that was wasted. So I went to SMU and Southern Methodist University, and I talked with the head of the mathematics department there, their chair, and we came to a conclusion of what kind of language was needed, what kind of code was going to be needed to be written, and then programs to be able to build this into a box. And once we did that, then I put it up onto a job board telling the people the possibilities that the guy from Dell said, he actually came back and said, well, you know, you have the availability of having over 4.2 billion users, anyone who listens to digital audio. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. And so I put this up and just started. And so I also had an advisory board that I set up out in Florida, people that had built software companies from the ground up. One friend actually sold her company for $62 million. Another friend sold his company for $28 million. And I went out there and talked with them, also with a very successful, what do you call it? Acquisitions specialist. And that's all he does is mergers and acquisitions, M&A. So we sat down and we tried to figure out then how to be able to launch this and what would be a substantial business model. And everybody said to me, well, I mean, to reduce stress, which is what white noise actually does. And if you go to my website, you will see below the video logo links that I have just put up there from the National Institute of Health that shows a detriment to your cognitive ability whenever white noise is applied. And once again, white noise is in 99.5% of all digital audio. So we are subjecting ourselves to it. Which reminds me of a story that about 6 months ago, I spoke with a television producer at WFAA, which is the ABC affiliate here in Dallas. And when I told him what the software would do, he said, it's absolutely brilliant, but we can't use it at the station because we do just the opposite. We add white noise to our audio so that we put people into a trance that are watching the program so that they will not reach for the remote to turn the channel, so they will watch the commercial, so they will buy the product, so our Nielsen ratings go up so we can charge more for the client. That's pretty diabolical. But it's just a confirmation that that's what happens whenever all of the television stations make us into couch potatoes. We just sit there and we don't know why. Yeah, I'm motivated to do this, but I'm going to finish watching this, even though it is, you know, a rerun of the Jackie Gleason show. Yeah, we just don't understand what we're doing. Anyway, so I've been on this journey to be able to do something to help benefit people. And once I found someone, I mean, like I said, back when I put this up on the job board, I got about 1,200 resumes. People wanted to work with me. And not one of them had all the qualifications I needed. So speaking with my attorney, he said, well, I got a guy that I worked with years ago, and you just talk to him and see what he has to say. I know he's a musician, he plays the violin, but he's kind of different. So I met with this man, and Nathan Frick. When I started talking to him, I could just see the genius in his mind, and he fell in love with this project. He actually had developed software that would find oil and gas in the ground from a satellite feed. And he was working for a company at that time, so the company got all the proceeds, all the royalties, and he got squat. So whenever I told him, yeah, I mean, you'll have a big percentage of the company without any problem, he goes, all right, let's do it. So he took about 3.5, 4 months to write the code for this. And I've got it up and running, and started trying to figure out how we're going to get this to market. In the meantime, I had, let me just see if I can go here real quick and find And just scroll on down here. Give me just a second.
Yep, no problem. We can see your screen too, so it's working.
Okay, great. And there. So I got a phone call and an email from Grammy Hall of Fame member Sir Earl Toon, who lives here in Dallas. Can you see that okay? See the picture?
Yeah, I see the picture. You might want to go full screen with it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not where I needed to be. Anyway, so Sir Earl Toon heard what I was doing and emailed me his latest digital master. And I ran it through the software, put both versions onto my cell phone, and we all went out to have dinner. And we're sitting at this quiet table, and he put on my studio headphones and listened to both versions side by side without knowing which was which. And about after 8 minutes, he took off the headphones, and he said, the first one was sweet. It was pinpoint clear. I could hear each and every note exactly. I had so much energy, I felt like I could dance all night long. The second one was murky. It just made me want to roll up into a ball and go to sleep. And I said, the second one was yours. And he looked and said to me, Alan, this software needs to be in every recording studio in the world. So, I mean, this is the man, you know, that's all he did for days and days and for weeks and for years was sitting in a recording studio and knows how his music is supposed to sound. Not just how it sounds, but now people can tell how it feels. Now, on my website, I do have a tab that says Take the Challenge. And I've got about 8 different songs on there. It starts with the Rolling Stones appropriately singing Start Me Up. And then there's the Girl from Ipanema, the Hollies, Willie Nelson, Mozart, Adele, even some headbanger music. And 92% of my 3,100 plus Facebook friends who have gone and taken the challenge have come back. And it's in column A and column B. So, and I don't tell people which one has been treated and let them just go find out for themselves. And then they send me an email and I let them know. 92% have come back and correctly identified which column has been treated, not because of the way it sounds, but because of the way they feel. So that's part of what we're going to be doing is trying to understand how to be able to get this out to people. Now, these specific frequencies, the name of my company is called Cymatrax, which is a combination of 2 different words. It is TRAX for tracks as in tracks of music, but CYMA is short then for cymatics. And do you know cymatics?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. For those that don't right now, cymatics is actually the observation of how we can see how the energy of a sound wave of frequency travels efficiently through the central nervous system. And so there are specific frequencies, like I said, that have been identified through these clinical trials that travel efficiently through the central nervous system and others that don't. What we see in cymatics and the basic observation of that is how when you take a stereo speaker and lay it on its back, put a metal plate on top, and then pour fine sand on top of that. Then you turn on a frequency generator and an amplifier, and if you look at the horizon of that metal plate, you'll see the sand is just bouncing up and down until you modulate to a specific frequency. And that's when you get a geometric pattern. And you continue to modulate, and that sand will go back into a blob again, but then it'll turn into another pattern, as shown there on the screen. So each one of these specific frequencies, they're all within the digital audio that we all listen to, especially in all music. Somebody asked me, said, well, what about different kinds of music? And I went and just told them, okay, think about it this way. Somebody takes a guitar and they play a note, they pluck a string, and then they slide their finger up. Well, you've got all of this digital audio going on. So whenever you are looking at the observation of how some frequencies are within the digital audio, you have to go back and think about, okay, so what is white noise? White noise, of course, is the, let's see if I can find this real quick. Pull that up for you. Okay. And there. White noise is actually a broad spectrum of, if you look at every single one of those millions of dots that are causing that area to be gray, and everything around is the white noise, the very center is actually a specific frequency. Well, the brain is like a computer, and it has RAM and a processor. And whenever you are thinking about 3 or 4 different things, or let's say a computer has 3 or 4 different programs running, everything is fine until you upload huge amounts of data to it. When you do that, you're slowing down the entire processing. Your other programs that are running slow down and come to almost a halt. That's why people listen to white noise to go to sleep. That's why there's so many companies out there that are telling young parents, use a white noise generator and it will calm down your child so they will go to sleep. But what you're doing is you are slowing down their cognitive ability. Now, they'll go ahead and still breathe, but when we go back and we start looking at, okay, how long will this take effect? Is it detrimental in any way? I am not going to say yes or no. What I will give you, though, is examples. Like Morgan Freeman hosted a program called Through the Wormhole. I loved all of that. And in that program, there was a neurologist, Dr. Roy Cohen-Kaddish, over in the Oxford Neurological Research Institute, that took and applied specific frequencies to the test subjects. The first, they ran an EEG on the scalp, and then they had these other electrodes emitting these other frequencies. Well, to do a clinical trial for them, they gave them video games to play. And they turned on the EEG and they turned on the video games and they started playing the games. And so they measured the score and they measured the EEG, and then they turned on the frequencies. Well, they were able to raise their test score, or the video scores, plus the EEG had a higher output showing a higher cognitive ability. Sounds great. But the amazing part was they brought the same test subjects back 6 months later, and they ran the exact tests again. And their second baseline was still higher than the first, with just one application of frequencies, showing you can rewire your synaptic nerves into a new subconscious programming with just one application of specific frequencies. And it lasted over 6 months. That was amazing. So we don't know what we're subjecting ourselves to on a daily basis, or how long it lasts, or what we're doing to suppress our brain's ability or capability. That's what I'm trying to do with this software. Sarcastically, I tell people the only reason why that I built the software was because I was tired of dealing with stupid people. But, you know, that usually does make some people, chuckle a little bit. But no, it's my way of giving something to the world. And the neurologists I've spoken with all just look at it and say, it is logical. It's just amazing. No one has thought of this yet. So once I got the software done, then my attorney has, his firm has 46 attorneys here in Dallas, including 3 patent attorneys. And one of them, Wei Jiang, was listed as the 2015 female patent attorney in the United States. She's a brilliant person. And she has did my patent for me and has come back, and everything looks really good. We have not got it given to us yet, but so it is patent pending. But we're looking to be able to find ways of being able to get this out to people. So once again, because of what Dell said, and finding people that would support this does take money, and I've got over $250,000 of my own money into this, and it is, you know, that's a big chunk out of the pocketbook. So I've just been looking at trying to find other investors, people that have been to the market before, especially with software, and have launched new concepts into studies. I met a man, Darren Martin, who is an international keynote speaker, and he and his wife were traveling on the way to Santa Fe to do a keynote talk there, and he then introduced me to quite a few people. The first one he introduced me to, I forgot his name, sorry. He is the founder, CEO of a company, of an artificial intelligence company called Gray Matter. And they just moved their company over to London. And they received a huge amount of funding to go forward. And he and I were talking, and he said, well, can we take your algorithm and then put that into the AI, and then the AI into a robot, with the understanding then that a human would understand the communication from the robot faster, quicker, and longer than 2 humans talking to each other. And I said, yeah, in most instances, yeah, that would work. So we have to keep an open mind of what's going to be done with AI as it comes forward. I mean, a lot of people are going, no, we got to put the brakes on it. I'm a positive-minded person. I always just look at, okay, so what are the possibilities to help advance humanity? And that's what we're doing with this software. Just think about all of the NBA players who get off of the bus to go play basketball. They all have headphones on. Well, if each one of them could have less stress, more energy, and be making better focused decisions while on the court, okay, there's no brainer there. The Center for Disease Control, the CDC, is reporting that 85% of all disease is caused by stress. Well, how much digital audio do we subject ourselves to? I've got to go back and show you a couple of pictures about stress and how I came about even thinking a little bit more, that led me into thinking what we are doing is harmful to ourselves. Okay, so, and there. This is a picture of the bed and breakfast that I owned back in 2006 through 2009. The house was built in 1895. It was a Fig Tree Manor in Palestine, Texas. And it was on what was called Pier and Beam Foundation. And I'll show you a picture of Pier and Beam here in a second. But inside of the office was a side-by-side freezer that was so loud and so hot, it was unbearable to go in my office and work. So what I did was I had the refrigeration guys drop the compressor and the fan from the unit down below, under the house, in between 4 of these pier and beams. And we'll get that back up. And there's a picture of that. So that's pier and beam foundation. So the area of the brick and mortar then holds up the beams, and then they put other boards on top of that, which is the flooring. And in the center, they put two 18-inch square cement slabs to which they dropped down the compressor and fan, and everything was fine for about 4 or 5 months until I had a plumbing problem under the house, and so I had to go fix that. And while I was under the house, I thought, okay, I better go next to the compressor and fan, make sure that nothing is blown next to it to generate heat so it would burn up. So I went over to the pier and beams, and actually I took my flashlight because it was dark under there, and I looked around, and I was just totally amazed at what I saw, because the 4 columns that were closest to the compressor and fan had actually disintegrated the cement in between within just 4 months from the vibration and the frequency used. And I asked myself the question, if that's happening to hard matter, what's happening to our central nervous system, which is 90% water, and sound travels much more efficiently through water than it does through the air? And so that really made me think about it. Think about all the kids that are going off to college, and they are inside of their dorm room. Well, their nightstand next to them is one of those small refrigerators, and it's got that compressor going all the time, and they sit there and they try to study. Hello, son, how are you doing? Well, I'm having a hard time. I don't know why I can't talk. I mean, why I can't think this. I mean, it was a good subject for me. Well, they've got this influence. They're sitting there trying to study, and the ability to have a good cognitive recourse is going away. So there's just so many different things that have been coming about that I'm just, like, as I said, like the neurologists have said, I'm just amazed that no one else has thought of this. You know, Dr. Bruce Lipton, in his presentations over the past few years, has said the cells are influenced by 4 natural environments, and that is chemical, heat, light, and sound. You know, the chemicals which we produce from our glands and what we ingest, and then the heat and the environment that we do put ourselves in, and the light. We are learning then about so many different kinds of light rays, blue light and infrareds. Nobody's doing anything with sound. I started looking at more, trying to find national clinical trials that were research, and I found a study that was just done over in India where they studied 2,000 truck drivers, and 83% of them were having digestive problems. And it wasn't because they were eating truck stop food. It was because of the vibration and the sound of the constant engine running all the time. And their recommendation within the clinical trials, they spent $1 million doing this, looking at it, said was that they wanted to soundproof the cab. Well, think of all the truck drivers there are out there. That's not going to happen. But we have to become more conscious of our environments that we're placing ourselves in. The other trial that comes about that a lot of people have been questioning is from Canada, and the adverse effects of living within 1 mile of an industrial wind turbine. The constant woof, woof, That trial showed that 85% of people that lived within 1 mile of a wind turbine were probably going to have adverse health conditions. And think about all of these that are all over the world now. I mean, off the coast of Scotland, they have like thousands, tens of thousands of these wind turbines out there. And most recently, they showed death in the marine life out there. And they're saying, oh, well, it can't be the wind turbines. Nothing like that's ever happened before. Okay. Well, so we just don't know. Trying to understand, and I want to pull up another slide here for you, is one that I have talked with other laboratory clinical trial professors and doctors, physicists. This is what I was talking about in understanding how a specific frequency will go through the central nervous system. So here you've got the cytoplasm, and here this is one single cell. And every cell has, I mean, so many receptors, and they are once again influenced by the chemical, heat, light, and sound. So as a specific frequency that I showed you would travel efficiently through the central nervous system goes in, it will not disperse its energy as quickly as white noise that disperses all over and causes the brain to send its cognitive ability to the area to identify what's going on. So that's another reason why that we lose our focus whenever we are subjected to white noise. So, can get rid of this. I'm sure you've got quite a few questions here so far, but I mean, go ahead, just shoot something at me if you want to.
Yeah, wow. You know, like it's my mind was definitely enjoying that presentation, the research. And the one thing that came up for me was just appreciation for you to solve this problem, because in my research of looking around and understanding cymatics and frequency and vibration and sound, I'd come across in the past similar findings saying, you know, the radio, just be careful with how like it's tuned, like rather than listen to the radio, listen to something else. And if you look at sonic geometry, which we talked about before the podcast, very similar things. The Resonance Science Foundation is all about resonance, and it's really vibration through sound. And so I'm just aware of, you know, how powerful this could be and how powerful it is to remove that, because that's what creates this, well, partially what will create brain fog, brain fuzz. And we're getting bombarded by these frequencies and these sounds. We're not even aware of it. So what if you removed it? And one of the analogies that I use is it's like a fish in polluted water. You're in water and it's all polluted and you're kind of shaking around. And when you clean up the water, you just need to function as a natural fish or a natural human, and you're going to accelerate cognitive function, how you feel, and everything. So it's really extraordinary stuff. I guess what I would ask and I appreciate, and the other thing that I was really grateful for is just, you know, you see the problem, you understand what it is, you see that no one's doing anything, and it's like a 3-year journey, pain in the ass, you know, to make this happen. It's not an overnight thing where you just solve it. It takes a lot of dedication, time, problem solving. So I'm super excited to use it and experience it. And I know how powerful it can be if it's, you know, used everywhere. So amazing stuff. So the question, I guess, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, the last presentation that I just gave a couple of weeks ago, I went all the way back into understanding how sound was actually used back in ancient Greece. And if you remember the lyre, you know, the little hand harp that was played, well, the person that played that music, that's all they did. I mean, they didn't have podcasts or television or drive to the grocery store. All they did was sit there and pluck these strings. And they found specific frequencies that tuned in to the body and made them feel good. And a lot of these frequencies were used. Pythagoras, the father of sound and music, the golden mean ratio of pi. This is what we're using within our software. I mean, we're not using just the regular decimal system. We're going 3 decimal points behind the number itself, so that we can actually customize this to each individual as we go forth and we do launch this. Now, to just let you know then about what we're looking at doing is we're going to be launching the software for free so people can download it on their device, and then they can take the file from their device and run it through there, and it'll take about 5 seconds, and then it will spit out another organic music file for them. So they'll be able to listen to whatever they need to without having less stress, or with having less stress, sorry. Then version 2, what we plan on doing will be just a small charge, maybe 99 cents, maybe $1.99 for a subscription per month, so that people can take, and they'll have an interaction, so they can take their phone and they can move a little slide on the phone, go back and forth, and reduce even more, a higher percentage of the white noise, which would be detrimental to music, but it would be advantageous to spoken word, podcasts, books on audio, corporate training, online education. Online education, that's a $107 billion a year industry. Can you imagine a university taking this and, let's say, 10 different online universities are all running the same program, the same understanding of teaching of political science. And it's the same program, but the different universities are offering different ways. But one of them is using this software, so that the student will have a higher GPA. They're going to understand, they're going to have less stress, they're going to have more energy, more cognitive focus. They're going to retain the data faster, quicker, longer than anybody else. This is going to be something that's going to be used by everyone who listens to digital audio. So then in version 3, which we do have up on the whiteboard right now, will be for streaming media, which is the way that all digital music is going right now. And in that aspect is whenever we will charge, I'm not quite sure whether it'll be $3.99 or $7.99 per month. And once then we get, let's say, just 1% of the Spotify market alone, that's $800,000 a month revenue. Now, before that, as we do get funding coming in, we will form a 501c3 or a nonprofit to be able to form Cymatrax Healthcare. And then we will hire quite a few grant writers and other, will engage in other neurology studies, so that we can go forward, outside of just autism. Because other neurologists have said, well, once you go and show positive influence on autism, then you can go after Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, stroke, ADHD, PTSD. It's all open just by using this type of therapy.
It's extraordinary. It's the applications are extraordinary, and because I've heard of this with some deep conversations with really intelligent people, and they basically said to me is like the Rife machines, like pretty much any disease can be found and, eliminated. That technology apparently exists. I can't access it. I don't know for sure. I've just heard of things like that, and it seems to make sense. Go ahead.
I actually had a girlfriend back in 2002 who contracted breast cancer. And she went through the normal stuff. She went through chemo and radiation, and she had this real long, beautiful black hair and lost her hair. But the breast cancer went into remission. 2 years later, the breast cancer came back. And she was so overwrought with this that she looked around and she studied and found all about Royal Rife's technology. And so she found one of the original machines up in Canada and went up there and bought it and brought it back and used it religiously 4 times a day for an hour each day. I'm sorry, four times a day, an hour each time. So it'd be 4 hours each day. And she used it for 6 weeks, and her breast cancer went back into remission. You know, this is technology that has been, and if you look and find out about the AMA and Morris Fishbein and what he did to suppress technology. But now then we have the internet, and we can't suppress this technology. There's a company in Israel called NovoCure that now has FDA approval to cure a type of, what's it called, neoblastoma, brain cancer. FDA approval. They raised $95 million of private funding from T. Rowe Price, and then they raised another $165 million by doing an IPO. With all of that money, they are now all over the United States that I know of, maybe other countries, but they're doing other research and other clinical trials to cure another type of stage 1 brain cancer. Just using frequency, no chemo, no radiation. This is technology that's coming out now. And what I'm doing is bringing about not the cure at this time, which is another far off, somewhere down the ultimate goal of using sound. But I'm wanting to be used as a preventative, to be used as a way of being healthier, of growing. I had a semi-professional physician's assistant ride his bicycle next to me when I was going around the lake. And I explained it to him, and he was just amazed. He said, I get it. I get it exactly. I mean, every single person that I know that rides bicycles will want to use it so they can train with it. I mean, as I mentioned then of the NBA players, well, then think about any type of computer software developer. All they do all day long is sit there with headphones on, and they sit in there writing code. Well, if they had less stress, which would then equate into less sick days, and their output was higher, how much would a company pay for that? I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, for me, in a sports background, what I'm curious about is, peak performance, but also what also is even more important, I think, is brain development for kids and how we could, number one, mitigate the nonsense coming in and remove, what they're getting bombarded with, and then allow then the technology. So then their brain is probably going to develop faster and quicker. And so I'm just curious, I guess I'd just ask, where do you how do you see it specifically applied to kids? Like, would it be like they put on like a soundtrack of anything? Maybe you find those and then it's removed and then they're kind of in a positive frequency type of thing?
I want to go back to prenatal care. So many young parents have asked me about the Mozart Effect. And I don't know how many people out there watching this will know about the Mozart Effect, but what has been done and taught to a lot of people is to take a set of headphones and then put it onto the area of the unborn child, of the expectant mother, playing classical music. And what they're talking about mostly is Mozart, but I mean, there's others that, you can go all the way to simplistic of Bach, But Mozart is a very good example. And trying to then understand, if you're going to play music, if the parent is emotionally tied to love songs, well, love songs within pop music is a very standard way of composition. It is a ABA form. So you've got your main theme, then you've got a reprisal, and then you go back to your main theme. And in most pop music, it is written in a 1-4-5 chord. And that's all there is. And so if you're going to classical music and let's say a Mozart symphony, you've got all of these different instrumentations, and then you've got all these different conductors doing different tempos and different sections, and different sections within a symphony that create all these different neural net pathways within the child's unborn brain. It's opening up so many different avenues instead of something very closed-minded and one-sided in the way of thinking. Now, once again, going back to Bruce Lipton, he does talk about that our brains are like a computer, and we learn and program that computer with the ages of 1 to 6. And like a new computer, all we're doing is just feeding it full of programs of how to think and what to think. And so once we then get to 6 is whenever we have the basic things installed in our way of thinking. And if we can get back in there and fill a child with so much exposure to so many different things instead of just very set things, then the child will be able to think outside of the box and look into ways of accomplishing new things instead of being taught what to think. We will be teaching them how to think. And that makes a huge difference for the advancement of all humanity. But I want to get onto one other aspect that I just touched upon, and I believe you were leading up to it. You and I talked for a second before we started recording this, and that is the difference between emotional response and the physical response of sound and frequency. Now, the physical response, as we talked about and I showed through the application of Cymatrax, has nothing to do with the emotional response. And emotions are the body's formula, chemical reactions that we are taught how to react to an emotion between the age of 1 and 6. Let's go back to understanding music also. So when you are 2 to 3 years old, you're taken to a birthday party and you see cake and presents and other children and balloons, and you all sing a song. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, which is in a major modality. 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. Okay? And so every time then we hear major modality of music, we're thinking happy thoughts. This is mainly within the Western culture of understanding music. The same thing goes then whenever we are taken to, let's say, church during Lent, hellfire and brimstone. The music during that time is mainly in a minor modality. 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. That's the boogeyman music. That's the stuff you hear in horror films. And so from then on, whenever you're walking around, as you grow older, you hear this dramatic music. You're thinking, something is wrong. I don't know, but something bad is going to happen. And that's part of the programming that we have within our emotions. And that is part of what we learn through the modality of music in the early ages. What I'm talking about then is about using specific frequencies within that music to make our lives better, to make them healthier, to be able to accentuate the the energy going through the central nervous system and communicating then efficiently with the brain. So the brain will go, okay, instead of the white noise on there where the brain's going, what the hell's going on? Why am I feeling this way? So it's very basic and simple, as long as you just get out of saying, well, music makes me happy. Well, let's look at the physics of that. Not really. I mean, happiness is a choice. That's what all self-help and psychiatry is teaching now then. You know, we have a memory of such music. And people ask me now then, what kind of music do you listen to? Well, I mean, as a past professional opera singer, I used to listen to classical music all the time. But I just realized I'm not enjoying it. I'm analyzing it. How many oboes are playing? How many first violins? Is the conductor taking it at this tempo faster than what I performed it at? I mean, it was just an analysis. So I started listening to ambient music. And one of my favorite ambient composers goes by the name Liquid Mind, Chuck Wilde. I mean, the man is just, he hit upon something. He didn't even try to do it. He had a friend that was in hospice. And he went to go visit his friend, and his friend was just yelling and cursing and throwing things all over the place. He just said, I don't deserve to die. So Chuck went home and recorded this CD and brought it back to him and said, here, listen to it. I'll be back over the weekend. I can't stay here with you. So he listened to it, and when Chuck came back, his friend had completely changed. And if you go listen to Liquid Mind, I don't know if you know it or not, but it's just layers of different frequencies and pitches and timbres that actually build. It's like getting an internal massage inside of your central nervous system. It just pulls and releases and lets go. And whenever his friend passed away, and Chuck then came back to get that CD, the nurses went to him and said, can we get a copy of that? Because it's worked so well for everybody up and down the hallways. It's made everybody less stressful. So that's what I have been listening to ever since about 2009 is I really try to focus in my morning meditation, listening to ambient music. And a lot of people, there was a woman, I'm forgetting, she is the editor-in-chief, I don't know if it's Forbes magazine, it's one of the really big biggies. Whenever she's writing an article, she listens to, and she calls it soundtracks to movies. The stuff in the background that you can't sing along with, the stuff that you don't have a preconceived memory of. You know, back to the happy birthday to you. Oh, I'm going to feel happy with this. Now, this is stuff that you can't sing along with even if you tried. So you've got these vibrations, these frequencies going through that are allowing you to think clearly and make choices of what you're going to think. Not have that memory come in and say, well, I had a flat tire when I was listening to Golden Earring, so anytime I hear Golden Earring, it's going to make me think of being out on the side of the road. You see what I'm saying? So we can find ways of being able to facilitate choices of what we're going to think. You're familiar with EFT tapping?
Yeah.
Okay. For those that aren't, emotional freedom technique. What happens is that basically, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are going to, maybe will correct me, but I've talked to a few different practitioners, and I say to them, basically what you're doing is you're taking two fingers and you're tapping on your hand, and you're saying affirmations. I will be healthy. I will be wealthy. I will be wise. And then on the side of your head, I will be healthy. I will be wealthy. And then on your leg. And you do this for a while. What's happening is you're sending these vibrations through the central nervous system, And that's hooking up with these spoken words that you have. So you're forecasting what your life is going to be that day. You're telling yourself what you're going to do, the success you're going to have, who you are. And now then think about the ghetto blaster, the guy who's driving down the road, and you can hear him coming a block away. And they are pounding themselves with, motherfucker gonna cap your ass. They are making their lives that way. They're telling themselves, I am going to be in street violence because that's part of who I am. That's the hood I come from. And it's just really a shame that people don't say, well, yeah, I can make choices and get out of it. Or that's part of who I am because that's the environment I was living in. It's just amazing that what people are not taking that people are taking for granted, the influence that what sound and music is actually doing to them. And they're making choices, but they're not making good choices. I mean, once we went back into, I talked to you about Pythagoras. Well, all of that went all the way through, and people were using music for health benefits. Let's say up until around the 12th to 13th century, when the Catholic Church actually forbade the use of what's called the tritone, the diminished fifth or the augmented fourth, which has a particular effect on the central nervous system that jolts it into stopping to think one way or the other. If you think about the European police car sirens, bum, 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 bum. Well, there's a reason why they chose that interval. And so it has worked. And so the Catholic Church did not want composers to use that because they wanted people to be with God. They wanted to teach them to be a certain way and to hold them into a meditative state during the entire time of the church until, well, there's so many different conspiracy theories, but we'll get up to Giuseppe Verdi, who was and still is known as the father of opera. And he got to be so successful over in Europe that he got invited to conduct his music with different symphonies all around. And he actually was choosing to use 432 hertz as concert A. And because it felt good to him, he wasn't completely insistent on it, but that's what his choice was to make what concert A. And concert A, when the violinist stands up before the conductor comes out and then the oboe plays the A, and then everybody tunes to it. Well, when Verdi was going around the country, he was having a hard time because he'd like to bring some of his own people in to be able to play difficult pieces, and he would insert them into different orchestras so that they could teach. But the problem was these other orchestras were tuned to other frequencies, like 440 hertz or 430 or 442 or even 430. And trying to then retune an entire orchestra, which includes pianos, harps, and organs, was almost impossible. That's the reason why that Verdi tried to get everything at a particular concert A. And so there was an influence going around until, I don't know if you've heard about the conspiracy theories about the scientists that went to Adolf Hitler and they said, if you raise concert A from 432 to 440, your people will be a lot more susceptible to your teachings and to your propaganda. So he gave it to Goebbels, and Goebbels mandated it so that every orchestra, and in 1939, England even saw that what Germany was doing and said, okay, all our orchestras will be at 440 as well. And then in 1951, after the war was over and everybody researched everything that was going on into the laboratories of Nazi Germany, for some reason, the International Standards Organization made 440 hertz as concert A. So the entire world would tune to it. But we don't know why. It was just, this is a good note, which reminds me of a lot of government studies, military studies on frequency. I have read reports from the federal government showing that, oh yeah, well, frequency doesn't matter because we tried it at 25 hertz and 50 hertz and 100 hertz and 200 hertz and 250 hertz. Well, they're thinking, in these multiples of 5 and 10. And as I told you before, that doesn't work. We need to go all the way back into other specific frequencies. And if you're looking at the golden ratio of pi, when you're looking at the Fibonacci sequence, you're really going down into so many other frequencies within those frequencies that we can tune ourselves to. But I'm probably getting way off the track.
No, I don't know, man. Well, it's interesting because, that stuff for the conspiracy rabbit hole, I've been down a few of those holes myself, and this comes up. Manipulation. I was curious when I was younger why we still had war. And so I researched propaganda, language patterns, just all these different things. And I know for sure they use sound, for sure. And if it is like the primary motivator, or primary, I don't know how to phrase it, but like just a powerful use, they're going to use it. And I feel personally, even before you came on, that sound and frequency and radio is being used in a non-life affirming way. I'll just put it that way, in
Sure.
a positive. And if you think about just something simple, like the lyrics, just go on any radio station, listen to the lyrics of the 90, the hit stations and everybody who's cool now. It's just, the rap is complete nonsense. Nobody's saying anything. It's tuned to it's just like nothing. It's ridiculous. And so there's no meaning. And music, if you go back to, singing around a campfire are as old as you go, music is powerful. It's healing. And that's what it's for. It can be used for good. Like any technology, it can be used to serve people and it can be used against people. So, when we take these technology and we start to use them in our benefit, we can really transition quick. And this is what I'm excited about, is having these technologies come out. One of the things you talked about in Greece that reminded me of when I was in Egypt, I don't know if it was Saqqara or somewhere else that I went. I think it was something else, but they had these squares. So it was just a wall and it was all made of whatever material was made, concrete or whatever the case was. And they had these square, and you just put your head in the square and you could hear something.
Oh, yeah.
You were in a vibration. And
Right.
Apparently the guides were telling us that was a space for healing. So we can use vibration for healing. And what I personally believe, and I'll share another conspiracy theory with you. What I personally believe is whether it's from the radio, because and just a simple one is like when you say, like, you go to the bar and Rihanna's on, it's like drink, 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 drink. You're gonna smoke, 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 smoke. Well, repetition is hypnosis. It's just like choose other words. Choose be nice to the person next to you and have a good time, and maybe give a random person a hug and see how they're doing. I don't know. That's probably not a great lyric, but you get the idea. So I think that frequency through, you go deeper into radio, you go into the television, like you talked about white noise. I very much believe that it's being used to put us in a bit of a fog. Look at people are stressed. They're stressed and they're confused and they're not empowered generally. And if we can get to the root of that and we can mitigate that, then we're doing okay. But I've heard that some of the bridges on the planet, like if you look at the Boston Bridge, if you guys are looking at this, look at the Boston Bridge. That thing looks like a tuning fork. And I've heard maybe that it's conspiracy theory realm, but I think so, that they actually put gold and platinum in the strings, and they can tune it, and then that frequency can do the whole city, and just do this light little buzz just to keep you in a little bit of a state of confusion, just like in the exact same way of your refrigerator, right? Or when you had it in your house and it's decimating physical objects through this little just vibration, just in the same way a water can decimate, stone over time. So if that's what's happening, and we can look into it, and I know that maybe we can get you on another time to look at that slideshow, but you've touched on it here and there, and you've done a lot of research, into this and how powerful that is. So
yeah, I wanted to give to show just one other slide real quick to show a little bit of hope that what we're coming up with. When a dear friend of mine, Dr. Pat Evans, and I had a 3-hour lunch over a year ago, and she was the one that gave me the idea of using the software for autism. And so I recently contacted Autism Speaks and offered them my software to do clinical trials, and they said, well, that's great, but we don't do clinical trials, we just raise money, but we got a guy for you in Dallas. And so what I did was I contacted a name they gave me, which was Dr. Craig Powell, and he has the Powell Laboratories at University of Texas Southwest. And whenever he and I met, we talked about it, and he said, I have other companies that want me to do clinical trials for them, but what you're doing is groundbreaking. And so I wanted to yours. We just need to raise some money. So if there is, I showed him all of the clinical trial data from the National Institute of Health and others that I'm just going, everything is right here. It's already been documented. We just need to get this out to people. And once again, I'm just going to say that what we're trying to do right now is not heal, but we're just trying to allow people to understand, go ahead and listen to the Rolling Stones and listen to Willie Nelson and listen to ZZ Top. I don't know if anything will help Justin Bieber's music, but, we'll try it, and help. Anyway, my sarcasm's getting offhand. But anyway, no, I greatly appreciate the time that you've given me here. I just wish that, we could go on and be able to open this up, maybe even do a TED Talk sometime. We'll just have to, find out what could be happening, what can come, in the future. Trying to think if there was anything else that would just be earth-shattering. Nope, I think we've covered everything.
That's amazing.
But anyway, no, I've got, here is, let me just leave you with one thing that I just absolutely adore, and that is one of my heroes. My first hero was Martin Luther, because he just went against the establishment. But my other hero, though, is this guy, and Tesla, and how he talked about, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that's what this this application, the software that I'm bringing about is going to do. It's going to be like the new way of understanding people to be drinking water, much more than drinking Coke, or any kind of soft drinks. It's going to be a way of eating organic, to find ways of eating healthier, to stay away from the fast food establishments, to nurture our bodies in a more efficient way.
100%, man. Amazing. And all of my research definitely, supports what you're doing. It's come to the same conclusion. And I'm so grateful you spent 3 years and a bunch of money and went through a whole bunch of stuff to bring this out, because, I saw the same thing, but I had no idea, how the heck I would do anything about it. And there you go. You popped in and, you're looking at solving a major problem. So tons of gratitude.
Well, thank you. Everybody can come find me on Facebook. And it's Alan Brunton, and I do have a Cymatrax page there as well. We'll be making announcements there about the launch, and we'll be making announcements then on LinkedIn. So I do have a nice page there as well. And they can go to the website, and they can take the challenge, and they can look at all, and they can start talking about it before we even hire the PR firm to put that out there to say, guess what's coming? So, no, I'm appreciative of you and your audience. And I just say thank you very much for allowing me to come in here and tell my story.
Amazing, brother. Well, I appreciate you. I look forward to using the technology on this podcast and making sure all other podcasts use it, and it gets into radio and it gets into as far and wide as we can spread it. So thanks so much, brother.
All right. Thank you so much.
See you guys.